The city lights blurred into streaks of neon, casting an eerie glow on the wet streets. Rain hammered the pavement relentlessly, creating a symphony of droplets that echoed through the night. Mark sprinted towards the station, his briefcase slapping against his leg with each hurried step. He was late. Again. The rain soaked through his clothes, but he didn't care. He had to catch that train. The last train was his only way home. He burst through the station doors, gasping for breath, his lungs burning from the effort. The station was eerily quiet, the usual hustle and bustle replaced by an unsettling stillness. The platform was deserted, save for the train waiting with its doors slowly closing. He lunged forward, heart pounding, and squeezed through just before they slammed shut. Relief washed over him as he realized he had made it.
Made it. Just in time. He panted, trying to catch his breath, the adrenaline still coursing through his veins.
Mark slumped onto a seat, his chest heaving. He was alone in the carriage, the emptiness amplifying his exhaustion. The dim lights flickered slightly, casting long shadows that danced across the floor. The only sound was the rhythmic click of the wheels on the tracks, a steady beat that seemed to sync with his racing heart. He closed his eyes, letting the motion of the train lull him into a sense of uneasy calm, though his mind remained restless. His hand brushed against something cold and metallic on the seat beside him. A silver ticket glinted under the dim carriage lights, catching his attention. It was intricately crafted, the words Kronos Express etched across its surface in elegant script. He had no memory of buying it, and its presence puzzled him.
What's this? A ticket? Kronos Express? How did this get here? He muttered to himself, confusion etched on his face.
He turned the ticket over in his hand, examining it closely. A strange sense of foreboding crept over him, making the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. The scenery outside the window began to distort, the familiar cityscape warping into impossible shapes. Buildings twisted and stretched, defying the laws of physics. The familiar cityscape dissolved into a dizzying blur, the world outside becoming a chaotic swirl of colors and shapes. He gripped the armrests tightly, his heart pounding in his chest as fear took hold.
What? What have I stumbled onto? He whispered, his voice barely audible over the sound of the train. The ticket in his hand felt heavier, as if it held some unknown weight.
The train lurched violently, throwing Mark from his seat. He cried out, bracing himself for impact, but the impact never came. He opened his eyes, his breath catching in his throat. The train was no longer in the station. It hurtled through a tunnel of swirling colors, stars streaking past like fireflies. He was no longer in his world. Panic clawed at his throat. He searched for an escape, a window to pry open, a door to force. But the windows were sealed, the doors locked tight. He was trapped.
No, this can't be happening. I have to get out of here.
He sank back into his seat, clutching the silver ticket like a lifeline. The words Kronos Express seemed to pulse with an eerie light. His gaze fell on the ticket stub still attached. A single word was printed on it: past.
Past? What does that mean?
Fear turned to a chilling certainty. This was no ordinary train. This was a journey through time. But to what end? And who was driving? He was a passenger on a runaway train, strapped in for a ride through the darkest corners of his own history. He could only hold on and pray for a chance to get off. The train screeched to a halt, the sudden silence deafening. The sound of the brakes echoed through the empty carriages, creating an eerie stillness that seemed to stretch on forever. Mark cautiously rose to his feet, his heart pounding in his chest. He glanced around, trying to make sense of his surroundings. The carriage door slid open, revealing a platform bathed in an ethereal white light. It was almost blinding, yet strangely inviting. A sign hung above, its letters wrought in iron. Kronos Junction. The name seemed familiar, yet distant, as if from a half-remembered dream. He stepped onto the platform, his shoes echoing on the pristine marble floor. Each step felt significant, as if he were walking through the pages of his own history. The air was heavy with the scent of forgotten memories. It was a nostalgic aroma, a blend of old books, faded photographs, and distant laughter. A solitary figure stood at a ticket booth, shrouded in shadow. The figure seemed to be waiting, as if expecting Mark's arrival. As Mark approached, the figure turned. The movement was slow, deliberate, and filled with an air of mystery. It was a man, his face etched with the weariness of ages. Deep lines marked his skin, telling tales of countless journeys and endless time. His eyes, however, burned with an unsettling intensity. They seemed to pierce through Mark, seeing into the depths of his soul. "Welcome to Kronos Junction," the man rasped, his voice echoing strangely in the vast emptiness of the station. It was a voice that carried the weight of centuries. "The train will be departing shortly." The words hung in the air, filled with a sense of urgency and inevitability. "I trust you are finding your journey illuminating?" The question was loaded, as if the man already knew the answer.
Where are we? Who are you? Mark's voice trembled, filled with confusion and a hint of fear.
The man smiled, a slow, unsettling curl of his lips. It was a smile that held secrets, promises, and perhaps a touch of menace. "This is a place between moments, a crossroads of time. Here, past, present, and future converge, creating a realm outside the ordinary flow of life. And I am merely a guide through the labyrinth of your own existence. The train, however, is yours. It runs on the tracks of your past. Each carriage holds a fragment of your history, waiting to be revisited. Each stop a chance to bear witness, to see, to understand, and perhaps to change." He gestured toward the platform's edge. The gesture was both an invitation and a challenge. A spectral train engine materialized, its form flickering like a candle in the wind. It was a ghostly apparition, yet solid enough to carry the weight of memories. "The next departure is about to leave," the words echoed, a final reminder that time waits for no one. The train lurched forward, plunging back into the swirling vortex of time. It was as if the very fabric of reality was being twisted and turned, pulling him deeper into the recesses of his own memories. This time the colors were softer, tinged with the golden hues of a fading summer sunset. The light bathed everything in a warm, nostalgic glow, making the past seem even more idyllic and serene. They solidified, resolving into a scene both familiar and achingly distant. It was like watching an old film reel, the images flickering and coming into focus, bringing with them a flood of emotions and memories. A small ramshackle house stood nestled amongst a grove of oak trees. The house, though worn and weathered, exuded a sense of warmth and comfort, a sanctuary from the outside world. Children's laughter echoed in the air. Mark recognized it instantly. His childhood home. The sound was pure and untainted, a stark contrast to the cacophony of adult life. He watched as a younger version of himself played in the backyard, his laughter carefree and full of life. The boy's energy was boundless, his spirit unbroken by the trials that lay ahead. He saw his parents, their faces unlined by worry, their smiles bright and unguarded. They were the pillars of his world, their love and support the foundation of his childhood. He saw a life untouched by the harsh realities of adulthood, a time when dreams were boundless and the future stretched before him like an untrodden path. It was a time of innocence and endless possibilities.
Oh my God, it's my old home. I remember this. I remember everything. The memories came rushing back, each one more vivid than the last.
He longed to reach out, to warn his younger self of the pitfalls that lay ahead, to hold on to the fleeting happiness of that moment. But he knew that the past was immutable, a series of events that had already been set in stone. But a wall of impenetrable glass separated him from the scene. It was a barrier that could not be crossed, a reminder of the unchangeable nature of time. He was an observer, a ghost from his own future, condemned to watch the past unfold without the power to change it. The feeling of helplessness was overwhelming, a stark contrast to the control he once believed he had. And as he watched, a single tear traced a path down his cheek. It was a tear of both sorrow and longing, a physical manifestation of the emotions that churned within him. It wasn't the pain of past hurts that moved him, but the realization of how much had been lost, how far he had strayed from the boy he once was. The innocence, the dreams, the boundless energy all seemed like distant echoes of a life he could barely remember. The train lurched again, tearing him away from the bittersweet nostalgia of his youth and hurtling him towards his next destination. The journey was relentless, a constant reminder that time waits for no one.
No, not yet. I need more time. The desperation in his voice was palpable, a plea to hold on to the past just a little longer.
But time waits for no one. It marches on, indifferent to the desires and regrets of those it carries along.